You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show podcast powered by the Sportsbook at Golden Moon Casino at the Pearl River Resort. To get in on the action, visit Golden Moon Casino today.
WRKS Pickens Jackson. Live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge inside the Bank Plus studio. We're back. It's the Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Streaming live worldwide on the Out of Bounds radio app. And on your radio at ESPN 105.9.
What is that thing?
The Zone.
All right, the Out of Bounds Show. ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Brought to you by Sellers Wine and Spirits. We're live from here in Starkville, right by campus in the historic Cotton District on Russell Street. I've got Blake Mania with me. He's back in the Bank Plus studio. The Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line is 601-995-1059. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Or go to favorites.com, F-A-V-E, favorites.com, and save on your auto and home insurance with a local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. The number 601-995-1059. Show is powered by Farm Bureau Insurance. Twitter handle at BoBounds is also brought to you by the spray and bed liners and lift kits and wheels at Rick's Pro Truck and RPT. RPT Commercial is now open at right there at the airport, Highway 80, right across from Miskelly Furniture. And glad to have them on. RPT Commercial, new location, Highway 80, right there at the intersection near the airport in Pearl. And right by Miskelly Furniture and Jeffcoat Fence, and just a rock's throw down from Fowler Buick GMC. Want to welcome you in, say good morning, good show today. Steve Palazzolo was really good talking Cowboys and Buccaneers, and then we did a deep dive into Tua Tagovailoa, the SecQB with the Miami Dolphins, and he had a really good career for Alabama, and as Steve has said time and time again, you know, the NFL doesn't wait on you. They just don't. Now, the one kind of person / position that gets a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt, because I mean they cut players that we think have been stars or have been great or really good at one point, a few years later all the time, right? I mean, as soon as you lose not a step, not a half step, I'm talking about just a tenth of a step, you're gone. You know, you're out. You got to go get a sales job, be a CPA, whatever it is you want to do. And get into sports talk radio. But the one thing for Tua in the one position / dude that gets a little bit of the benefit of the doubt is if you're drafted in the first round as a QB, because the front office wants to be right, just like all of us want to be right. The front office in the NFL wants to go to their owner and go, see, you know, we were right. We did all these thousands of hours of evaluating, and we had scouts all over the country, and we did this, and now we would like to deliver to you, Mr. Owner, a QB. Because if you don't have a QB, for the most part, in the NFL, every now and then, you know, I guess maybe more than I don't know. In the 2000s, it's a little weird. You got Brady in so many Super Bowls and has won 7, but maybe we do have some pop-up teams every now and then that do it a different way with Nick Foles, Brad Johnson, Joe Flacco, and Trent Dilfer. But anyway, if you don't have a cool, fun QB, you're just not as interesting in the NFL. So it's a big year for Tua down in Miami. And why the NFL is so cool is right out of the gate they have, you know, a division game. AFC North, East, with the New England Patriots and Miami Dolphins. So what will Tua be? How will this look? Is he good enough? You know, I understand physically he couldn't do some things last year, but, man, when you admit that you don't know the playbook, that blows my mind.
That's crazy.
Well, it tells me you didn't do the work. And if we know from the jump that you have to spend 15 to 18 hours at the facility day in, day out, and you don't do that from the jump, like Manziel, Ryan Leaf, Jamarcus Russell, Michael Vick, Cam. Some can overcome it for a while just because of talent, but don't ever really reach their full potential. If you don't do it from the jump, like Dak Prescott didn't know he was going to be the starting quarterback until Tony Romo was hit, I think, in the third exhibition game. It may have been the second against the Seahawks, but let's say it's the third. That was back when they were playing 4 exhibition games. At that point, he was the third string, I think. Quarterback had just moved up because of another injury to kind of 2, but nobody was talking about him in Dallas. And boom, I want to say 10, 12 days later, he was the opening day QB and had a handle on the offense and so on. But if Tua doesn't know the offense, then he didn't do what he needed to do. They fly you in the next day after you're drafted in late April. So even with COVID and whatever he could or couldn't do physically, he had May, June, July, and August. That's a lot of time. I mean, that's plenty of hours to throw himself into this iPad, tablet, video cut-ups. I mean, they deliver it to you to where it's like when you deliver a pizza or when you get a pizza delivered to your door. What do you have to do? Well, you have to get up from your recliner and go to the door, and that's it. And grab the pizza and put it on a counter and grab a slice. That's not real difficult. So my question is, how alarming or concerning is it that Tua Tagovailoa acknowledged that he didn't know the playbook? And he told people that.
That's the biggest concern. I know Palazzolo is like, well, we got to focus on what's on the field, and I get that that's the end-all, be-all. But, like, who in a leadership position walks out onto the podium and says, I'm unprepared? Like, it just doesn't happen.
I don't know the playbook.
Can you get that trust back? I mean, see, we don't talk about this as much, but locker rooms are a fickle place. Like, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of testosterone, and everybody's... There's a lot
of politics.
Yep, and everybody's wants the team to do well, but at the end of the day, they're all worried about making sure that they're receiving their next paycheck. And if you think Tua Tagovailoa is ill-prepared to be your starting quarterback, well, what happens when your quarterback's bad and you lose games? Everybody gets cut. Everybody gets going a different direction.
And he's in a soft market.
Yep.
He's lucky.
It's not a good place to be, though, if you're Tua Tagovailoa.
If he was in Chicago, and I know Chicago's never had a quarterback until maybe now with Justin Fields, but Chicago, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, where they live it and breathe it, and they are, 24/7 mad sports talk radio, where they're yelling into the microphone and or a caller is talking about jumping off a bridge because they didn't get a first down the day or night before. That Tua said that, I don't know the playbook, is not that he said it, I'm sorry, that he didn't do the work.
Yep.
I mean, that he said it is still a concern, but the bigger concern is that why didn't he do the work? He was drafted. He got a bunch of money. Just because his hip was messed up all of us last year had more downtime. I mean, we never stopped doing shows, thank goodness. I can't imagine having to go to the house and, work from your home for a month. I know some people loved it. And, I work from my house all the time later in the day at times. But, I was glad we had a place to go and spend. We're usually in the studio for 5 hours, which is fun. And that's our prep and our work and our pre-prep and our post-prep and all that. And we have to know what we're doing. And that's on a much smaller level than Tua. But, he had plenty of time. In fact, he had more time. Even people couldn't get or people weren't as comfortable to get on planes and travel. And so this is insane. But I wonder why he's gotten a pass. I guess he's an Alabama quarterback that won a national championship as a freshman. Has he gotten a pass? Or is it because he's at Miami and although it's a cool town and a cool franchise, people still don't care in the big world of like Good Morning Football and the NFL Network? It's a good question I don't want to think about. I didn't know the playbook. We've got some Saban audio coming up next that is delicious. Rat Poison with Saban. The Rat Poison segment with Nick Saban coming up next. The The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by the Charbroiled Oysters at Drago's and Edwin Watts Golf Shop on County Line Road.
You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show podcast, powered by Tito's Handmade Vodka. Try a Tito's Handmade Margarita today.
All right, last homestand for the Mississippi Braves. M Braves, Atlanta Braves, AA affiliate. Beautiful stadium. Great atmosphere. Fun. Inexpensive. M Braves in town today, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to wrap up their homestand in the Jackson metro area. Mississippi Braves, you can find them on social media. M Braves in town Thursday tonight, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. Farm Bureau Restaurant and Grill has been renovated. And Blake and I have told you about the bucket nachos. They've added all kinds of delicious fun when it comes to food and concessions. One thing that Pete gets is mixing it up and giving you, the fan and the customer, more options. And they've done a great job both in 2019 and 2021 of doing that. And I know they'll do even more. So the Braves are in town, Atlanta Braves AA affiliate, home games Thursday through Sunday at the Braves' beautiful park. Talking about a well-built, well-done baseball park. It's a pretty place. It has aged really well. That's what happens when you do it right. Farm Bureau Restaurant and Grill has been renovated. That's also a great place to watch the game. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide blew out the Miami Hurricanes last weekend. Neutral field game. They played in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Georgia Dome. Then Ole Miss took that place over on Monday night and blew the doors off of the Louisville Cardinal, U of L. But Saban's not happy. They're playing Mercer this week, and that'll be just mind-numbing to try to watch that game. I won't watch that game, obviously, but there will be some Roll Tide fans watch for a little while, and then some will watch the whole game, which is great. But Nick Saban is not happy with his team and their focus and maybe their practice habits, and this is what Coach Saban had to say this week.
Okay, I think several years ago, it was the 6th or 7th game of the year. We just beat Texas A&M, and people started talking about our team, and I had to bring everyone's attention to what I referred to as rat poison. All right, so now we basically played one half of one game. All right, we went ahead 27-0 in the game. And then it was basically 17-16 after that with 2 stops inside the 5-yard line. And, so we didn't maintain our intensity in the game. So we were affected by the scoreboard. So we haven't proven that we can play for 60 minutes. Then we come out on Monday and really not ready to practice. I guess because of respect we have for the opponent, I don't really know all that. Or maybe it's what they read on social media or in the media or whatever after one half of a game this season. And, then it was hot yesterday. So, so we got every external factor in the world that is affecting our ability to maintain intensity.
All right. I love that. And see, that's what we need from Blake. That's really what jumped out at me is we need Blake, and I'd like to hear from the listeners. We need Blake to maintain the intensity because, even on weeks where you're playing Mercer, you got to be dialed in. 5 shows, 3 hours a day. We're in the studio 5 hours a day at least, and that's what we're looking. We think that Blake's got a chance. You know how NFL GMs and coaches talk, right? We believe that Blake has a chance in 2021 to maintain that level of intensity. But according to Nick Saban, his team lost that intensity on Monday, and it's rat poison. Now, Lane Kiffin has a great time with that because Lane spent a couple of years, 2 or 3, Blake can tell me, under Saban. And even though they had a volatile relationship, Lane changed the game. Lane changed the game for Alabama and their offense. And he really did. Even though it hurt Saban while it was happening, and he wanted to somewhat put Lane in a phone booth, Lane had the ability to change Alabama from ground and pound to a vertical passing game. And it's a mix of what Lane has picked up over the years at Fresno State and Southern Cal and some other stops, and then the whole Baylor stuff and whatnot. And I think Lane continued to refine it at Florida Atlantic. But my point is, Saban reluctantly allowed him to do it. And Lane loves this rat poison stuff. So Saban's trying to tell you that, he needs his team focused for Mercer so that they can get ready to play at Florida in Gainesville next week. He did make a great point. There was a little while there where it was a competitive game. Maybe there's some things that we don't like to really drill down on in that game that could come back to bite Bama a little bit. I mean, we've already put Bama at 15-0. Saban made on, and Blake did a good job with that audio, but Saban went on in that press conference to give you a couple other things that happened in that game that Miami actually did well or that Alabama didn't do well.
Yep.
So as much as we want to look at what happened as far as pulling away and the fact that the final score was Alabama big, Saban goes back with all of his assistants, looks at the digital cut-ups and goes, man, I can look at 24 things here that we didn't do well. And if we don't do well, could that come back and haunt us against a Florida or an Ole Miss or a what was the other game I said they may have a problem? Florida, Ole Miss, and at A&M. So I don't know. Blake, we'll see. We've already crowned them as champions.
I love the way, look, we make fun of Saban for being over the top sometimes about distractions, right? And rat poison and some of the, it's like, why would you get mad, Saban? You just won by 25. How could there be anything negative? But the way he that's not contrived, and he doesn't do that for theater. That's not yelling on the sideline to get hot and bothered and look like you care. Saban is upset because he knows that for them to win a title, which is all he cares about, they have to be as close to perfect in every facet of the game every time they go out on the field. And if you're not, then you have to build off it. I think Tom Brady's the same way. When we talked about that article about his, clock that counts down to the Super Bowl the day after the next one ends.
Sure.
But who's not like that? I know we harp on it and we did a whole segment on it earlier, but like Ed Orgeron got to the mountaintop and started looking around and was like, dang, I like it up here. Nick Saban gets to the mountaintop and then goes, where's the next mountain to climb?
Right.
And that's the difference it's hard to get to the top, but it's 100 times harder to stay at the top. And that's what makes Saban so uniquely interesting.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So rat poison is back in Tuscaloosa, in case you didn't know. And if you want some rat poison, according to Saban, you can go to the Alabama football practice. And they have to go to game. Did he watch the film and see some things where Miami did do some things at times in that? Look, and Manny Diaz is not Dan Mullen. And so Saban's going through – I think Blake just nailed it. Saban's walking you through this. It's not because he's worried about Mercer. He's walking through this because he knows that he's got to get this team to play and play at a certain level maybe 2 or 3 times this year, right, for 60 minutes. And if they don't win the title. Because for Bama, it's not about the regular season, but it is about putting themselves in position to go into the college football playoff. Now, they're still the overwhelming favorite in the SEC West and a win in Atlanta, but you can still stumble at some point in the college football playoff. I mean, they could stumble next week again in Gainesville. So Saban is trying to eradicate the rat poison in the Alabama football program, and we want to hear from you. The Mississippi Ag text line is 601-885-3776. Blake's pad level is low today. He's trying to maintain his focus, especially after going out earlier in the week. Back in a second. The Out of Bounds podcast is brought to you by the delicious Philly cheesesteak sandwich and cheeseburgers at Roosevelt's at Live Oaks Golf Club. All right, good show today. Appreciate Sellers Wine and Spirits here in Starkville hosting us. Go-to for all your wine and spirit options and needs. Great selection of wine and spirits here at Sellers Wine and Spirits. Great location, too. Russell Street, right by campus in the historic Cotton District. And they're giving away a Tito's Vodka Fender Stratocaster guitar. Got to come in and register today through next Saturday. Come in and register, and you may be the winner. Super cool guitar here at Sellers Wine and Spirits. Tito's Fender Stratocaster giveaway today through September 18th at Sellers Wine and Spirits on Russell Street, right by the MSU campus. Our game of the week is North Carolina at Mississippi State. MSU will have their hands full, but it is a winnable game and one desperately need. So we'll watch, keep an eye on that. And can't wait. We'll discuss it even more tomorrow. Blake had some great numbers on how dominant North Carolina, or how much they like to run to the left side, and how effective and efficient they are. 9.5 yards per carry, 9 plays, 10-plus yards running the ball to the left side. Pro Football Focus has NC State's running back duo as one of the top duos in the country. And then Zonovan Knight, one of those running backs, was listed along with Jerrion Ely with Pro Football Focus as one of the top 5 running backs going into the NFL draft next spring. They got an All-American on the offensive line and 2 more All-ACC offensive linemen. So we'll keep an eye on that as far as that matchup against Crumedy and Charlton and Wheat and Brule and some of those other guys as far as the Mississippi State front, both the D-line and linebackers. The 2 running backs are built like the Snoop Connors, Josh Robinsons of the world. They're big, thick, physical backs, but they've got shake and wiggle in them too. And we've had some great running backs come through this state. Obviously, Walter Payton in the 70s at Jackson State was Hall of Famer and one of the best ever. And, Payton was built like a freight train from the hips down. And, of course, long before strength and conditioning was the thing to do, Walter Payton was a legend. Isn't that incredible? 2 guys out of the SWAC, set the table for strength and conditioning in the NFL at a time when a lot of guys were flabby. You remember seeing the shirts. I remember going to high school games in the 80s. I was like, dude, none of these guys have any muscle tone on them. And Walter Payton and Jerry Rice were freaks at a very early age and stage in the world of strength and conditioning, right, in sports. All right, Blake's yelling at me. We've got the Dave Bartoo interview. We've had a great day today. I want to thank you for listening. If you missed anything, we went heavy first hour. We did not have a guest, but we had some great topics. Heavy SEC football, LSU, Kiffin did a big hit on Mississippi State, North Carolina State. We hope that you'll hammer the SEC Insider hit at 7:30. We've got to rip that out every day. We need to rip out all 3 SEC Insider hits, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, guest or not. But love for you to hit Apple Podcasts, search the Out of Bounds Show. Hope you're excited about game day and the Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tonight with Dak and Brady, and a big game in Starkville, Mississippi. And before you get to the game, you want to stop by Sellers Wine and Spirits. And also this weekend, you want to hit Two Brothers Smoked Meats, their delicious food and drinks, including their famous wings and street tacos. This is Wild Man Dave Bartoo. We've got the Wild Man himself. Talent, location, coaching effect. The college football matrix. He is Dave Bartoo on the Modelo guest line. Was there any takeaway from last week? Like, as you looked at the numbers and the scores and who covered or who didn't and the over-under, did you have a takeaway from last weekend, Bartoo?
Yeah, dude, sissy shirts are cool.
Yes, they are, my man.
Dude, Lane, when you're listening, I expect an Ole Miss powder blue out for LSU game. That's all I want. I want a powder blue out when they host LSU, and leave a ticket for me at will call. That is going to kick some ass.
Ooh, I like that.
But takeaway, I guess it's still Alabama's world, right? You know, in the roller coaster amusement park of college football.
Well, you talk
ups
about
and downs.
scheduling, right? And
yeah.
that's terrible scheduling by whichever Miami AD did that, because it's been a trend now for 13 years that Saban spanks you on a neutral site to open the year, right, Bartoo?
Exactly. Schedule. It's. I love scheduling because one of the reasons is that was like the first kind of analytics consulting I did way back when. I ever tell you the story when I was on spring break and I got a call from Penn State about playing LSU?
Yes. Tell the story again, please, though, for our listeners.
But yeah. So I mean, I was at my parents' house, way out in eastern Washington, and I mean this is way out in the middle of nowhere. Where they lived, there was no cell service except across the bridge. You had to walk across the bridge of the Columbia, and it was like 7:30 in the morning, and I had to go across the bridge because I was out of tonic for gin and tonics. So I go across the bridge, and I get my tonics, and I'm coming back, and the phone rings, and I was like, who do I know in Nashville? Now remember, the coaching staff had just left Vanderbilt to go to college, to Penn State, not more than a couple of years before that. I'm like, who knows in Nashville? And this was at the time I was working on the electronic preseason magazine, and I was trying to get a bunch of images, and I'm like, oh, okay, well maybe Vanderbilt's calling. They got some images for me, and get on the line, and it's a guy from Penn State. I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, and I'm thinking, why would a Penn State person about, you know, football images be calling me with a Nashville number? It was one of the coaches. And they're like, well, we've kind of been following you, and we like your take on how to schedule and the numbers behind it, and our AD wants to schedule a home and home with LSU, and we don't think we should at this point, and we think your opinion would back that up. Would you mind talking about it? I'm like, no, I don't mind talking about it. Cool, bam, I'm on conference call. Everybody's in the room. But the gist of it was, this is the same thing with Miami, right? I'd say the same thing with Miami is you're trying to gain traction. Right? You're trying to boost your recruiting. You are trying to enhance your image. You are trying to get back into the discussion. You don't get back in the discussion losing football games. Ever. So why would you do this if you're Miami? You know, this is too soon. It's too early. You're trying to build momentum. Now, the LSU team that Penn State was going to be playing, now, Penn State was nowhere near where they are right now from a recruiting standpoint, and they were likely to lose both of those football games. The next week, LSU scheduled a home and home with Syracuse, beat the holy hell out of them twice. Now, the thing is, though, with Penn State, if they'd have scheduled that LSU game, they would have finished the season 8-4 and out of the top 25. They didn't schedule it. They finished 9-3, and that was the first time they were in the top 25 since all the sanctions. And to me, that value, that brand, that marketing, that is what you have to be looking at. And so with Miami, I see the same parallel. And scheduling a game like this with Alabama, week one, dude, self-defeating. Definition of it.
Anything? All right. So, you know, we're always talking trends, numbers, and analytics with you. Dave Bartoo on the Out of Bounds show. You nailed Arizona and BYU. You loved taking Arizona in the points. You loved Arizona and BYU in the under, so that was good to you. You mentioned don't bet against Bama. You said either stay away from it.
It was 17.5.
Right.
It was the 17.5 line. This was so I've taken a completely new approach to betting numbers. And most of what I've done in the past has all been around kind of a TLC thing, focusing on the talent, where the game's played, coach effect, and so forth, and trying to find like the 3 best bets, or maybe 4, or maybe 5. See, and just talking about it that way, that to me is not a consistent system. And so I've gone back into just looking at the actual numbers, but looking at it in a window. Every 4 weeks, we just take the season and move it forward, because everybody usually looks at performance over the season when really we need to be looking at it on a sliding scale. So in September, a neutral or road favorite that opens at 17.5. So this is just September, right? Because as we know, October, football teams get better. November, they get better. The numbers are constantly changing on the evaluation. But in the month of September, neutral or road team that opens at a 17.5-point favorite. So you got to be jumping on the open, all right? But that team was 11-5 in the last 10 years on the open in September. Alabama made it 12-5. And so the goal is to find these numbers on a sliding scale to grab them. Because with football, you only have 4 scores, right? You got 1 point, 2 points, 3, and 6. That's it. And without 4 and 5, you're going to have holes in the system. And so inside the numbers, if we look at it properly, not as a whole season, but as a period of time, we start finding these holes to take advantage of. Alabama, now obviously, probably the rule of thumb should be you either bet with Alabama or don't bet at all, right? I mean, it's kind of like the whole, do you want to stand next to the devil or be in his path, right? I mean, it's just that's just the way it is on that one.
All right, let's go to LSU, UCLA, Bartoo. You were on this early when we were talking to you this summer. In spring. And you just kept hammering, look, guys, I don't like hiring coordinators with no play calling experience. You always talk about, you're like, I love LSU's talent. I love their roster. Love the players. They got NFL players. But I don't, first of all, you don't like rolling through coordinators every year if you can't, and then hiring guys with no play calling experience. And you kind of threw out a warning that, hey, UCLA, even though they don't recruit close to LSU, could either hang around or win this game. And Bartoo, they dominated LSU last weekend.
Yeah, and again, this was a big opener. And if you look at UCLA, the what you didn't see in UCLA was the progression of the offense. Usually, when people look at like a UCLA, probably your neck of the woods, and most fans in general, the first thing you look at is, well, they've been under 500 for 3 straight years. Yes, but their offense, the first year was bad. In year 2 of Chip Kelly, it was 43rd in scoring efficiency. Last year, they only played 5 games. It was 17th in scoring efficiency. They had their entire offensive line back. They had their quarterback back. They had Chip Kelly back. They had all these new running backs. Everything was in place. What you didn't see it because the defense sucked. It was bottom 10 defensive scoring efficiency for 3 straight years. It was horrible. And so the record reflected the horrible defense, but it didn't reflect the progression of the offense. And so it was like this perfect storm. It was year 4. The offense had progressed to a point where you expected a top 10 scoring efficiency offense going up against a head coach that, he won a national title, but outside of that, his career coach effect is one of the worst all time, and he just hired 2 new guys who never called plays. That was a recipe for disaster, and we talked about it over the summer on your show. We all knew this was coming. Everybody's listened to the show, and you and me talked about this. We all knew this was a possibility, and then on Saturday, unless you were an LSU fan, you had fun watching it unfold.
Dave Bartoo on the Out of Bounds show. Dave, let's go to Mike Leach. There are people that are already bailing. This blows me away. Already bailing out on Mike Leach. Mike Leach won big at Texas Tech. He won big at Washington State. You already know somewhat kind of these numbers. Prior to his arrival, he was at Washington State for 8 years. Prior to his arrival, they were 29-66. No bowls. During his tenure, this includes 2, 3, and 9 seasons as he was trying to get them up and running. Mike Leach went 55-47 with 6 bowls. At Texas Tech, prior to his arrival, he was there 10 seasons. 11, sorry. They were 62-53. Not bad, but he went 84-43. Since leaving, they're 64-71. So what would you say to people who are already bailing on, because I think it's ludicrous, but bailing on Mike Leach?
I wouldn't even say a thing. I just hit the ignore button. It's just there's something, and I get it. Fans get frustrated. They want to win. We're an instant oatmeal microwave society. We want it now. And then you're looking over and like, oh my gosh, Lane's doing so great with Matt Corral. Matt Corral. We talked about Matt Corral before anybody in the country was talking about Matt Corral, right? I mean, we were talking about this last year. We'd take him before, anybody else in the SEC. And so Lane inherited a great situation, killer offensive line, NFL quarterback. And so you add all these things up, and we barely get by Louisiana Tech. I'll tell you right now, there's a team in my backyard called the Washington Huskies. They would kill for a W right now. So you take your wins, and you keep moving on. But how many games are you into the Leach era? 12?
Yeah, 11. Yeah.
I mean, seriously. Really, we're bailing on this already, and it's not. Maybe let's say Mike Leach doesn't work out, but to constantly trying to be retooling your program, your culture, recruiting, 1 year into it, 2 years into it, 3 years in, how many programs have we seen trying to chase that? And all they're doing is digging a deeper hole because they have no consistency whatsoever. So I don't know whether Mike's going to work out or not. He was, in my opinion, the number one option and had the highest potential of anybody for Mississippi State when they made the hire. He has an incredible track record at 2 other programs that are bottom half recruiters in their divisions, conferences as well. So everything points to long-term it's going to be successful, but trying to judge it after 11 games, stop. You're just hurting yourself mentally doing that.
Bartoo on the Out of Bounds show, and Bartoo, you're right, is 12 games in. He's 5-7, and last year was an all-SEC schedule except the bowl game. I think with some programs you were referencing that are constantly retooling, that over their 100-year history won at a much higher level than Mississippi State. I can think of 3 that you've talked to us about a lot over the last few years is Miami, Tennessee, and Nebraska. And it's been a revolving door. How does that work, Bartoo? It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. I mean, just think about it in your life. How good are you going to be at something if you are constantly changing jobs? How settled can you be if you're uprooting the family and moving all the time? I think a lot of things we do in life, we look back and we kind of like, man, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have. We find ourselves chasing things for whatever reason, and whether it's a job or who knows what. Instability doesn't breed consistency. And while you might be able to catch lightning in a bottle and hit it big 1 year. Look at Ed Orgeron, dude. You want to talk? That's the greatest lightning in the bottle ever. But his inconsistent and disorganized approach is going to catch up to him, and it's only a matter of time. So I don't think any program should be looking to pull the trigger quickly unless the first year is really bad. Look, -4 coach effect or worse. Most of these guys are going to get fired. Only 3 have survived in the last 20 years, but you didn't have that at Mississippi State. So unless it's really a bad rookie year, you just got to give it the 4 years at least and go from there.
Okay, Mississippi State, North Carolina State this weekend. NC State is not dealing with transition. Obviously, Mississippi State's been through 3 coaches in just a few years, Mullen, Moorhead, and Leach. Dave Doran's been there a while. They're not special by any stretch, but he's been there like a decade. They got a veteran offensive line, veteran QB, 2 veteran running backs. They're a 2.5-point favorite. They play in Starkville. What do the Matrix numbers tell us, Bartoo?
Well, but by the numbers. So if we go TLC, we got a better recruiter. We have a better career head coach, and you're in Starkville. So you're taking Mississippi State by TLC. So you have a home dog with better talent, and even if you say equal coaching, okay, because you have a lot of stability in NC State. Doran and those guys have been there a long time. But you got a home dog with better talent. So that right away, right there, to me is upset alert. And I know 2.5, 3 points. That's not a big upset, but still, the line starts in favor of NC State, and it's still an upset. Now you go look at the numbers. Remember how we talked about at the beginning? I've been pursuing betting the numbers and looking at windows. First thing is 55.5. That's what it opened at. That's where it is right now, at least by my numbers. 55.5 overall in the last 12 years. And the reason I go 12 years is because that was the start of the Chip Kelly era. That is the start of pace of play picking up. That is the acceleration, the proliferation, the magnification of speed in college football, and it picked up for 8 years and plateaued. And so when you look at that 55.5 over the last 12 years, in a full season, the over covers about 51% of the time. So you go, oh, why would I bet that? But in week 1, 2, and 3 of September, the over covers 9 for 12. So when you look at the smaller window of September and an opening line of 55.5, the numbers say bet the over. Now on the line, you had an opening line of, what did you say? It was 1.5, right?
2.5.
2.5. Okay, so you have a 2.5 open, and the line moved in NC State's favor, but they're on the road. So the September road favorite, which is NC State, if it hits 3.5, you grab the Mississippi State plus 3.5 at home, because in September, the entire month, that is covered 73% of the time. So by the numbers, we're going to wait till close and see if you can get State plus 3.5. You probably won't get it in your state just because of the way people bet.
Sure.
You might be able to get it somewhere else. But 55.5, the line says if you're going to hit something, you got to be on the overside of that, even though you're looking at NC State's defensive effort in week 1 and going, what? But I think if you're going to bet it, you're going to bet on the over or nothing. The nothing would be you're just concerned about that NC State defense and the numbers that they put up in week 1.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Dave Bartoo, College Football Matrix. We're going to do a Show Me the Money sports betting hit, although we just went through a lot of that, but not close to everything that we want to do. Like we want to get in with Dave on Pitt in Tennessee this weekend, which is very intriguing. And we also want to talk Arkansas and Texas with Dave. And then there's some out-of-conference games that could be fun and cool. I do want to throw this out because Dave mentioned him in the first 1 or 2 interviews that we had with Dave 10 or 11 years ago. Doran spent a lot of time at Wisconsin. So even though he wasn't technically under Alvarez is the dude there, and we know how powerful that program is as far as developing and coaching and all that. And Doran was there from 2006 to 2010 as either the DC or co-DC. So he's a pretty damn good coach.
Oh, then he went to Northern Illinois, and he was awesome at Northern Illinois. His coach effect was like plus 3 games a year. He is a hell of a coach. He is part of a hell of a coaching tree who's been behind his career. He just hasn't put it all together consistently at NC State. but it was a great hire by NC State.
Dave nailed it. At Northern Illinois, he was 23-4 and led them to the Orange Bowl. And they've been to 6 bowl games at NC State. So it may not have had that big Mullen or Freeze year, but he's been good there. He's been good.
It's going to be a dynamite football game. Get ready for another nail-biter.
Dave Bartoo at CFB Matrix on Twitter. Talk to you in a minute, buddy. Thank you, dude.
Yep.
Bartoo on the Modelo guest line. Lunch today at Burgers and Blues, Main Street, Madison. Lunch today, Roosevelt's at Live Oaks Golf Club. Smash that Philly cheesesteak sandwich. Lunch today, those charbroiled oysters at Drago's. And don't forget about a New York-style, big New York-style slice of pizza from Sal and Mookie's in Madison. If you missed any of the show, love for you to go to Apple Podcasts. Search the Out of Bounds Show. See you tomorrow from Starkville.